Good evening and welcome to the Franklin Township Board of Education regular meeting. Today is Thursday, October 20th, 2022. Mr. Bonanno, can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Desai? Here. Mr. Grippo? Here. Dr. Hopkins? Here. Mr. Jackson? Ms. Maris?
Here.
Mr. Shaban? Here. Ms. Singh?
Here.
Dr. Smith? Ms. LaCourte?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And for the record, both Walter and Mike said that they were traveling right now, so they let me know ahead of time. Can you read the Open Public Meeting Act, Brian?
By hand, too. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, Sunshine Law, copies of the public meeting notice were sent to the Courier News, the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, the Franklin Reporter, Tap into Franklin Township Clerk Manager, district schools, offices, and associations, PTO presidents, and posted on the district website.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn to confidential?
So moved.
Moved by Ardeman, seconded by?
So second.
Dennis, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourning to confidential for the purpose of discussing confidential matters, which include principal interviews and workers' compensation settlements. Minutes of the confidential session will be made public when the reason for confidentiality no longer exists. Thank you for waiting for us. We were in a confidential session, and the minutes for confidentiality will be made public when the reason for confidentiality no longer exists. We were discussing a principal interview and worker compensation settlements. Lori, can you do the Pledge of Allegiance, please? And then Nishita, can you do the goals or the mission statement?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That flies straight to the pole. The mission statement of Franklin Township Public Schools. Franklin Township Public Schools embraces its diversity, fosters excellent educational innovation, and empowers all students to achieve their highest potential.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, adding addendum A, personnel report?
Motion to
Moved by
Motion to
Alderman?
move.
What? You? Okay, moved by, you got that, right? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, our agenda is adopted. Dr. Avelli, would you like to kick it off with our presentation on FTS Warrior Health Center?
I think so, because our student rep is not ready yet.
Right.
Hello? All right, here we go. Thank you. So, a brief presentation. Tonight we just want to take a few minutes to formally introduce you to the Franklin Township Public School Warrior Health Center. Unique concept, not necessarily unique to schools, unique to us. The health center concept originated for us as part of the district's self-insurance initiative a few years back. And I'm going to further explain in just a minute or two what the self-insurance initiative is all about. So bear with me. So ultimately, after this short presentation, the ask tonight is what that says. The recommendation is that the board approve a multi-year lease to help make the center a reality. So that is what we're asking at the end of this presentation. And there's a picture of what the front of the center looks like at 61 Veronica Avenue. So I started out with a brief mention of self-insured. The overall arching concept as to why a school district or any entity would want to be self-insured is more direct control over the components that make up a health insurance premium. So for example, you have a network of providers in a health premium. You have the threshold of claims before reinsurance picks up costs that's considered in a health insurance premium. And you have claims management as part of your health insurance premium. In districts as large as us and with entities that are of similar size, such as the Township of Somerville, South Brunswick School District, who similarly is self-insured, Edison, and a host of others, Bricktown, Toms River, they, like us, are what is called self-insured, and the reason for that is because then these components that are traditionally built into a premium, we can shop. Meaning we can get better rate. We can get a better rate for our network of providers. We can get a better rate for reinsurance. We can get a better rate for the claims management piece because they may not all be by Aetna or whomever the case may be. So shopping out those different components of a premium allows you to, in essence, lower the cost of the premium. So that's why a district wants to be self-insured. Why build a health center as part of your health insurance program? Well, I think probably that graphic on the bottom, which I'm not going to take any credit for, but Mary deserves all the credit, is it reduces barriers to health care for the staff. You have a healthier staff and families overall, which means at the end you reduce the overall claims cost to the district. So really, the bottom graphic is a reason why you would want a health center to support your self-insurance program. Additionally, everyone benefits. You have a reduction in cost of claims through the use of dedicated local providers. You have reduced barriers to care. You have convenient access. 61 Veronica, it's in town. You have a variety of services available right on site under one roof: family practitioner, physical therapy, mental health services, laboratory services, x-rays, pharmaceutical services, all under one roof. You have no copay for appointments or prescriptions. You got flexibility, there's reciprocity. So if you're insured by the district, you can go to the South Brunswick, you can go to the Somerville, you can go to the Bricktown, you can go to the Toms River, you can go to any one of those facilities and get the same care and the same treatment. So flexibility, no copays, a reduction in claims, and ultimately, because it's total care, healthier employees, which is what everybody's interested in. So ultimately, where would our center be located? So we have selected, and we're recommending to the board, but we've selected a site at 61 Veronica Avenue. And for those of you that are familiar with our area, that happens to be kind of in the heart of like medical land. There are a lot of other providers in that area, lab services and that type of thing. So I would say it's a convenient location for a building such as this. We would rent or lease approximately 11,000 square foot on the bottom of this facility. If you're familiar with Veronica Avenue and you're coming off of 27, it would be on the left heading down into the medical park. And you would recognize that facade if you were traveling that way. What would it look like inside? And I know this is tough because it's kind of busy, but if you can get a little bit, if you can focus a little bit on it, I don't know how to make it bigger, so we're going to have to do the best we can. But you can see a lot of the services I mentioned all under one roof, which means, that's the total care concept, right? So you can see you have a medical director, a visiting doctor, you have exam rooms, you have a lab room, more exam rooms, a procedure room, a medicine room, an x-ray room. You have a pharmacy office. You have a lobby, which was that, with the pillars out front. A consult room, of course, bathrooms, obviously, a conference room, physical therapy, chiropractic room, so forth and so on. So all under one roof, all in one facility at 61 Veronica Avenue. And it would be the Warrior and the Warrior Health Center dedicated to those insured by our plan, which is all of our staff and their family. Other folks that would be able to use it, however, would be those who are also covered under the self-insurance program and have also partnered with Partnership Health, who is our Partnership Health Centers, who is our provider, meaning they're the ones who would bring the doctors in, they bring the nurse practitioners in, they bring the physical therapists in, they bring the chiropractor in. Those are the folks that provide the service. They also provide the service in South Brunswick, for the South Brunswick School District, and they're the same provider which is another reason why we selected them during our process, because they're also the provider for Somerville, the Township of Somerville, and they have a facility right in the heart of Somerville. I don't know the names of the streets in Somerville, but I can tell you it's conveniently located right next to if you're familiar with the Board of Health Services and where the county superintendent's office is, and that one facility, it's right in the same parking lot right across the street. And again, they supply and they handle the services for the township. So a good partner for us because of the reciprocity agreements and because they're going to be operating in South Brunswick, which for us, it will be in an office building that is near the South Brunswick Board of Education, which is right off of 27 here, not too far from us. So again, that's the floor plan. You can see all of the different services that would be incorporated in this approximately 11,000 square foot developed area at Veronica. So that's how will the lease be structured? Well, one of the reasons we're having this hearing, this presentation, is because this would be a longer than typical lease for us. A typical lease for us is 5 years. Anything greater than 5 years, we need permission to do that, and that's something that we're asking for this evening, because we're asking for a 12-year lease. It's actually 12.4 years, and the 0.4 is because the first 4 months are rent-free, but of course they get tacked onto the back of the lease. So there's no rent for the first 4 months, but there's rent after the 4 months after the 12 years. The deal would be structured so that it's $16 per square foot annually for the next 2 years, plus operating expenses such as taxes, insurance, and maintenance. So that approximately equals $10.50 to $11.50 a square foot, depending upon taxes, insurance, and maintenance and how they work out. There's a rent increase built in after 2 years of 50 cents per square foot. And it's always important for us as, the kind of budgeting that we do, that we know where this is heading rather than waiting for the market to drive that. So, that was negotiated into the lease. So for each subsequent year going forward after 2 years, it would be a 50-cent increase. There's an option for renewal after 5 years, and there's 3 5-year options built into the lease. The total rent, we're estimating it to be approximately $25,000 per month, plus utilities and staffing, funded by estimated savings in our health benefit line. Of course, there's a build out to the space. The landlord it's a 50-50. The landlord is responsible for up to $1.2 million of the build out, and then the district is responsible for sharing in that cost. And again, that would come from anticipated healthcare savings. And if we don't realize the kind of savings that we anticipate, then we do have a healthcare reserve. It's one of the reserves that a district is allowed to have. And what we could do is then move reserve into the healthcare lines to cover any deficit that may be created as a result of the lease or the build out. When would it be finished? Well, hopefully the board will approve the multi-year lease this evening, and then the landlord will begin the build-out as soon as possible. We're going to ask for approval on reciprocal agreements sooner rather than later. If you're familiar at all with the Somerville Center, that's already up and running. The folks for the Township of Somerville that work for the township already use that facility in Somerville, so that would be open for our folks once the reciprocal agreement is approved. And then the South Brunswick Board of Education is opening their facility, Mr. Bonanno, in the next 3 to 4 weeks, so a month. We'll give them a month or two. In a month or two, South Brunswick will be opening their facility because they've already approved it and they've got their build-out done, and they'll be having their grand opening in a month or two. And then our employees, if the reciprocal agreements are approved, would have access to their facility while ours is being built. So our employees would have the option of going to, while ours is being built, to Somerville and or South Brunswick. And if they don't live in this area, there's also one in Brick and Toms River that we would be looking for reciprocal agreements with. And I believe there's one in Long Branch? Not sure. Okay, but I know there's at least those 4, 2 in our immediate area. Integrity Health Partnership will host informational sessions if the lease is approved tonight. If we get moving on the build-out, Integrity Health Partnerships are partners in this. The people who provide the service in Somerville, the people who provide the service in South Brunswick, will begin hosting informational sessions to answer questions of our employees as we progress toward the opening of our own center. I think it's important to know that we're not going to be telling employees they have to go to this center. It's an option. Just like, going to the local urgent care is an option, just like going to your own doctor who you've had for 30 years is an option. Those will remain viable options. This will be another health care option in the larger plan. What we've learned from those who have ventured down this road who are also self-insured is that lots of folks migrate over to the employee center for convenience purposes, because it's dedicated to you, because it's easy to get an appointment, there's flexibility, and again, things like the copay and other things are better controlled. So that's where we're at. It is a hearing of sorts, so I would ask for questions from the board first. We'll do our best. Mr. Bonanno, I might have to ask you to chime in. This has been something you've been working on for more than a year now. So, but I think, Madam President, we take questions from the board first and then the public second.
Sammy, do you have any questions?
I didn't have any questions, but I did have a comment real quick. So I did have an opportunity to visit the Somerville Center with some of the folks here, and I will say that it's a Class A facility. I think it's a really big step up. This is like a jump in curve from the healthcare that I think we currently provide to providing a significant uptick. I would encourage our principals here to encourage your staff. I know we're going to go on a roadshow. Brian has advised that there won't be a single person in this district that doesn't know about this, or a teacher, or facility person. But I will say that that's great. The only thing I'd like to add to your thing, Dr. Valley, is I think one of the huge things that it provides is also a plan for each one of our folks, so that they'll understand where you're coming from in terms of a health perspective, and then they'll be able to guide you in a very dedicated way, using sophisticated algorithms and whatnot, to what you're most likely going to experience in your life and how to best mitigate that through your life. Like, look, you might be predisposed to these certain things. We know these things, and so they'll give you that. So in any case, I just thought it was a really great opportunity for our township, so I just wanted to put that in, as having visited and spoken to them multiple times. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori?
I also am very excited about this prospect, but recognizing that 12 years is a long time on a lease, I'm interested to know a little bit about any potential kick-out clauses that are in the lease, because things can change over the course of 12 years.
Mr. Badano, you want to speak to that?
Actually, I'm trying to remember that there is, as I recall, some option with enough notice to come out of the lease. I forget off the top of my head if that was 6 or 8 months, but I mean, a health center is not something, as you would well know, you're going to close up the next day. So we would have ample time to make that decision and move away from it if we had to.
And would there be a penalty if we closed out early?
No.
Thank you.
Not with the notice.
With
We would have to pay
appropriate
through the
notice.
notice, but
Right.
yeah, no
Just
penalty after.
Wanted to be certain of that. Thank you.
Nishita?
This sounds intriguing, and I want to go on a tour. Given that, do we have an interest meeting, like something that the staff has shown interest, especially if we approve and decide on this lease? How many % of our staff is interested in having that option in joining this?
So we haven't done anything with our staff particularly. What we've done is, as Dr. Ravelli said, the health center, Partnership Health Centers, has done this in many other school districts. And there's a curve. Obviously, when you start the program, you're starting from scratch and you're building up. The Somerville location has been open now 3 or 4 years, and they're up to 18,000 visits a month. So that doesn't mean doctor's visits, but it includes filling prescriptions, physical therapy, mental health. So, and their insured number is just above ours. We're at just under 1,100. They are just over 1,100. So we're within 100 people. So over time, they're seeing many, many visits. I don't know what percentage of that staff is going, but the number of visits they see on a monthly basis is very large.
Toms River has been in existence for about 10 years, and and it's a school district. It's larger than us. Toms River is larger than us, probably by, I can't imagine staff-wise, but student-wise, it's a couple thousand students larger than us, so staff would probably be, maybe, I'm guessing, 500, 1,000 more. Brian, I'm just trying to make sense of that. But at the end of the day, they've been in existence a lot longer, almost a decade, and they're on their second building. And I asked that question because I'm familiar with that facility, having come from Ocean County, and they're at 90%. 90% of the population in the school district that's insured utilizes the center, which, that was an approximate number they gave me when I asked that question, but that's what they said. Now, again, they've been in existence for almost a decade, so you can imagine they've had time to build that clientele. South Brunswick is just starting out, so we'll see. But the flexibility and the reciprocity makes a big difference too, because it just makes it more convenient.
One more question. So how much is the difference? So they can have HMO if they chose. They don't have to be part of joining this. I'm not quite sure if I'm.
Well, no, two different things. So you're talking about insurance. Brian can answer that. What I said was you don't have to go to the center, right? So that has nothing to do with the insurance aspect of it. So if Mr. Wilson chooses to go to his doctor, he can still go to his doctor, and Aetna's still going to get the bill, and they're still going to bill us. That's how that works. But he doesn't have to go to the center. But if he uses the center, he's going to be better access for him. We're going to get to Sammy's point. The idea behind it is total care for our employees. So you have healthier employees. You have a more managed situation. You have healthier people. You reduce claims. You reduce costs. Right? So everybody benefits. And that's what the model has proven in these other places where that's taken place.
Thank you. That clarified. Thank you.
Phil, do you have any questions?
John, the municipality of Franklin, are they involved with this, with their employees?
I mean, that is something that you could probably talk about down the road, but really as a self-insured entity, it wouldn't, it wouldn't be something that we could just offer right off the bat. I guess that's something we can talk about down the road, but there would be some complications as to how we could offer that and what perhaps they would have to do to partner with us in order for us to become their provider so that they could access that. But do I think there's a future there? There's always a way.
Yeah, the shared services are a big issue in municipalities. So, okay.
Dennis, do you have any questions?
Just a few. I know with Mr. Bonanno, you said that there's no down payment involved with the facility itself. When I say down payment, do we have to do any front money to the owner of the particular building itself that we leasing from?
No front money, so to speak. We would pay for 50% of the build-out.
Okay,
But
only.
Yeah, nothing to him. Once the lease is executed, we start our 4 months free rent. During those 4 months of rent, of rent-free time, we would still pay expenses, insurance, utilities, things like that. But there's no payment to the landlord.
Now, upgrades every 5 years, is that built into the negotiations?
So after the first, the rent increases after the first 2 years are 50 cents a year. After 12 years, we have 5-year options. So every 5-year option, there are increases of 50 cents. I think we have 3 5-year options after the 12.
Yes.
And with that said, I guess with the upgrades, I guess with painting and just the normal day-to-day wear and tear would be built into all that.
Well, normal wear and tear, painting, equipment, that's on us. The building is on the landlord, so HVAC, paving the parking lot, those kinds of things would be, a roof, for example. That's
A
on the
window
landlord.
leak, roof leak.
Yeah, that's on the
you know.
landlord.
Okay. Staffing, are we there yet in the sense of the?
No, that's
plumber?
Integrity Health Partners. They're the staffing agency. That's, so as they do in Somerville, and I'm sorry, I was about to say Somerset, but that's Somerville. As they do in Somerville and as they do in South Brunswick and Toms River and Bricktown, they are in charge of staffing and take on that responsibility. Of course, we pay for that, and we've already, that will be calculated into what I had said. That's separate from the rent. That's again, a different expense, but at the end of the day, they're in charge of all that. The pharmacy, the pharmaceutical person, they're in charge of all that. They're in charge of holding all the insurances and all of those things associated with providing doctor services. So they're an outside vendor providing those services under our roof.
And just my last question. Number one, first a statement. I was able to go to the Somerville facility itself and engage with the staff in there too. Very impressive, very impressive. And I guess to the public, just reassurance that this is an option, but you can still keep your own provider with the same insurance that the district is offering now. So just to reassurance with the public itself, it is an option, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even with our insurance now, we know that staff members go to a Medi-Merge at times because they can't get an appointment with their physician and they've got a sinus infection or whatever it may be, and they're going to a Medi-Merge. If they have an HMO, it depends on how that's classified, if that is going to be covered or not. They can go to this facility and use it as a Medi-Merge, and there'll be no charge, and and the pharmacy's right there, so you don't have to make another stop. So
Good.
Ardeman?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
I have one more question, sorry. Is there a number that we have in mind as to how much savings if people use this facility all the time, how much savings would they accrue in a year? And how much would that savings be for the township as well in term, not township, Board of Ed overall?
So we talked about return on investment. As a matter of fact, Mr. Shaban was very focused on return on investment. And we're looking, and obviously there are no guarantees in life, but what they're expecting is at a minimum 20% return. So that's to start, not in the long run, but to start as a 20% return. So, and they actually have said in your presentation went off, they've gotten up to 230% return in their facilities that have been running for 10 years. So there's the potential of really making an impact, but over time, we have to build the program.
And I just want to also piggyback on that, Brian. We talk about it in savings, but it's really controlling costs, right? Controlling rise. I don't know that there's savings per se, like all of a sudden, I'll make it up. Our health benefit line is, 10,000. I'm using numbers, by the way. These are not real numbers. And all of a sudden now it's 8, right? But maybe it's not 20, right? Like state health benefit plan is going up 16%, right? So the trick is to provide a really good service under one roof where people's care is really well managed so that you reduce the number of claims, which is a benefit to the board and a benefit to the employee. Healthier people lead to a reduction in having to spend money on benefits, which means we can spend that money elsewhere, like in the classroom. I think we're on to the public.
So,
sorry.
I just wanted you to confirm that if little Johnny is sick and I live in South Brunswick, I could take my son, who's not little Johnny, but I could take my son to the center in South Brunswick, or I could bring my son to the center in Franklin.
That will be a yes once the board approves reciprocity agreements,
Right.
which, that would come, but the answer would be yes, and it wouldn't be little Johnny, because little Johnny doesn't get sick, it'd be little Brian. Because little Johnny doesn't get sick.
Okay, and one of the things that we saw when we were there, because it's actually a beautiful facility in Somerville, to your point, Sammy, is the confidentiality. Because they have mental health providers, and you don't see who's going in there. You don't see who's going in to see a physician. So you're not, and it's one of the reasons it's not happening here is to remain.
Yeah, we were very intentional. I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't. And we were very intentional not to have this in a school building, not to have this here in this facility, to benefit our staff and their families, because we want to put it in a place where folks do go for medical services on a regular basis, in a place that is not too distant from our schools, like in the area, but not in our schools, so that we do maintain that privacy when it comes to health care for folks. So we were intentional about that, and that was something that you all wanted us to be intentional about, and I think that's why we landed at the place we landed. It just so happens to be kind of in the heart of where there are a lot of other medical facilities, which we think is a benefit.
And the other thing is, so I think this came up the other night in the meeting, if your child breaks their ankle, right, instead of rushing, I guess you're going to rush home anyway, but you have an opportunity to use their radiology department and so forth and so on. Some things that it doesn't cover is obstetrics and gynecology. But it covers a lot of other internal medicine, family practice type, mental health, physical therapy. I think they're bringing in acupuncture too, at least to Somerville, that's what they're saying.
I think they may have that there, yeah. I mean, it depends on the services you select, obviously, but we're trying to build the facility in such a way that even if we're not utilizing a service, we can incorporate that down the road and in the future, right? Like chiropractic, for example, if we start off with it or if we don't start off with it, those are all discussions we can have, and it'll be based on our numbers, but ultimately the facility will be there so we can move into that should it be a benefit. And those will be recommendations made by Integrity Health Partners based on our numbers.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
And if I could just piggyback off that a little bit, Nancy. You brought up a good example. You break your ankle. Well, you're going to go to the hospital. You're going to get your cast, and when that cast comes off, you're going to need physical therapy. You can go to this facility for physical therapy, even though you weren't treated for your broken ankle at this facility. You need medication. You leave the hospital, instead of going to CVS, you can go here, and no co-pays for the medication or the physical therapy. So it truly is a partnership with the insurance. You don't, it's not either or, it's a combination of both.
Anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay, can I get a motion to open for public comment on the Employee Health Center lease only? Moved by Bill, seconded by
So second.
Dennis, all in favor? Opposed? Public comment on the Employee Health Center lease is now open to the public. Please step up to the microphone if you wish to make a comment.
Okay, you want me to give it to him? I'll deliver it. Here, stay there, Nick. I'll deliver it, for the sake of time.
Wow, that's like service.
I like the service. So I just have two questions for Brian. How does the hospital work?
So anyone who is able to use this facility is covered under the district insurance. So currently we have Aetna, so you can go to any hospital that accepts Aetna. If it's an emergency, you can go to absolutely any hospital you're close to, and it's all still covered. There's no change. As I said, it's a partnership with insurance. It's not either or.
Okay, and then on the increase, it's 50 cents a foot per year, right? So that's 5,500, I guess, for the first year per month. 11,000 square feet times 50 cents a foot.
Per year.
Okay,
5,000 per
oh, that
year.
50 cents, okay, is per year.
Yeah, not per month, per year.
So it's 5,000 per year.
Yes.
Okay. Right, okay.
The realtor and you came out.
Since mental health is becoming more prevalent within healthcare, what services are going to be provided since it's more mainstream within healthcare?
Well, we haven't gotten to the nitty-gritty of exactly what will be provided, but there is space built in, and we expect to open up with healthcare services. At this point, I couldn't tell you whether it would be a therapist or a psychiatrist, but absolutely healthcare services will be available.
Good question. I hope your professor's going to give you extra points for that. He better.
But to that, we also have employee assistance. We have a very broad offering of mental health services within the district because it is incredibly important. So I just want to mention that.
Anybody else?
If I could just build on that point real quick too. So to Nancy's point about intentionality, even within, so it's one intention to have it far from the building so nobody can see you going in. And then even within the building, they actually have the mental health area sort of sectioned off too, so that to avoid any stigmas or somebody waiting in line to get into that office. So it's very much intentional about the internal design, what you couldn't see clearly there, about how people are to go even into those parts where you would want some more discretion.
And so we're clear, I apologize for the floor plan, but it's still in the works. Eventually, once we get really rolling and we can get some pictures of what's being built, what's taking place, and those kinds of things, we do intend to have Integrity Partnership Health come and do a presentation in a community forum like this, and then other community forums, because I know not everybody likes to come to a board meeting. So are there any other questions out here? I don't think we have any more questions there, Madam President.
Okay, Bill, did you have a question? No. Okay.
I move to
Can
close. Oh, sorry.
I get a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Moved by Ardeman, seconded by Sammy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment on the Employee Health Center lease is now closed. Brian, can you do roll call, please? Oh, can I get a motion to move this?
Motion to move.
Seconded by?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now can you do roll call?
Ms. Desai?
Yes.
Mr. Grippo? Yes. Dr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Ms. Maris?
Yes.
Mr. Shaban?
Definitely yes.
Ms. Singh?
Yes.
Ms. LaCourte?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Ms.
Thank you.
LaCourte, we may want to go back and just ask in
Yep.
case anyone, I think we missed the opportunity, we forgot to ask Alfred about folks on the phone.
I'm
If-
sorry. Is there anyone on the phone that has any questions?
And what do
about
they
the
have to
Employee
hit?
Health Center?
What do they have to hit, star?
Star 5. So if you're on the phone and you have any questions or comments about the Employee Health Center or any of the other topics we're bringing up tonight or presentations, just hit star 5.
Nobody, Alfred? Okay.
In the meantime, do we have a student, Mary? No. Okay.
And I just want to make mention to the board, we knew that this would be a rather lengthy evening, so we've got 2 more presentations. One, Mr. Wilson has to deliver in person because part of it is HIB training for the board. He's going to go last. Dr. Logren has to also present internal and state assessment results, which he screencasted, so that is also online for folks who are listening in home. They can go to our website, as well as when they see, when Mr. Wilson's up here, they'd be able to go to our website. In the main page of our district website, hit presentations, and they'll be able to see both Dr. Logren's screencast and Mr. Wilson's presentation. So in the interest of time, though, we had Dr. Logren do a screencast so he could just hit play, and you all can listen to it both at home and in the audience. And then we would take questions from the board only for now, because it's not a hearing. And then during public comment session, if there's any questions on assessment, I would encourage people to write it down, because you're going to have to ask that after Mr. Wilson goes during regular public comment. So that's my little editing. Thank you all for paying attention. And you're up, Dr. Logren.
'22 school year. Please keep in mind that this is a snap.
All right, technical glitch. We're going to get the presentation going, hopefully.
Thank you for tuning in to this presentation of student achievement data for the 21-22 school year. Please keep in mind that this is a snapshot of data at a particular moment in time in which, it was our first full year coming back.
I think we're going to restart it so we can have the
Thank you for
visual.
tuning in to this presentation of student achievement data for the 21-22 school year. Please keep in mind that this is a snapshot of data at a particular moment in time in which, it was our first full year coming back from remote instruction and hybrid instruction, and especially those areas where hands-on learning was.
I think we did restart it, but a little more volume would be great. Okay.
A lot
Thank
more
you for
volume,
tuning in
please.
to this presentation of student achievement data for the 21-22 school year. Please keep in mind that this is a snapshot of data at a particular moment in time in which, it was our first full year coming back from remote instruction and hybrid instruction, and especially those areas where hands-on learning was critical to learning, such as in math and science. It was challenging to say the least. But we embraced accelerated learning principles, and our teachers worked tirelessly to maximize opportunity for our students. Here we're going to take a look at iReady Math. The key metric, of course, is the mid-on grade or above. That's ultimately where we want all students to be. When you're in that dark green color, you're right on target for performing very well on the state assessments and just doing well. If you're in the lighter green areas, you're close to that. Obviously, if you're in the yellow or the lighter red or darker red, we provide interventions for you to help you to get on grade level. So this is a sort of historical comparison. You can see that in the prior 2 years we were steady. Unfortunately, we don't have the 1920 data in front of us, which was headed in a really excellent direction. But here you can see the past 3 years for our internal assessments for math. And there is, again, the past 3 years. On the NJSLA, the state assessment, which we took for the first time in 3 years, this last spring, levels 4 and 5, again, are associated with those dark green colors that we had just seen, and that's ultimately where you want to be. So here we have each grade level, and we have each performance level, and in the right-hand column, we compare our district performance level with that of the state. Keeping in mind that grades 7 and 8, many of those students take Algebra 1 and geometry assessments, and so they are actually found in these numbers as well. So this is a breakdown of percent proficient by grade level, and again 7 and 8, many of these test takers are found in these areas to the right. This is performance of subgroup, and when you look at the composite, you see that about 53% of our students are approaching or proficient, and about 47% are not there yet. So what are our next steps? This describes what we are doing in K-5 mathematics instruction, and this describes what we are doing in grades 6 through 12. Science is similar in that our knowing science and even our upper level science curricula really do require hands-on. The state test measures a student's ability to utilize science and engineering practices to explain scientific phenomena, and using hands-on really helps them to do that. So that was a challenge in remote instruction, and even coming back last year where we had a number of students quarantining and doing the best they can in those circumstances. So our proficiency levels are there. When you compare, so this is grade level, these are the different performance areas, and you compare our students' performance to the state at grades 5, 8, and 11. You can see we still have our work cut out for us. So in grades 5, 8, and 11, these are our percent proficient, and this is our subgroup proficiency levels as well. So approximately 50% of our students are still, we're still working to get them into the near proficiency and proficiency levels, and that's our goal, obviously, always. So what are we doing? Our teachers are continuing to use accelerated learning principles. They're also using pre-assessment tools to identify areas for pre-teaching. The supervisor is always looking to build additional office hours into the budget. And of course, they're using finally more of those hands-on inquiry-based learning opportunities so that students succeed. In English language arts, it also was a challenge, but more so writing than reading. This, again, similar to the math, describes, students want to be in that dark green level as much as possible. And when you look at K to 5, typically we begin with a smaller number, and that increases significantly by end of year. There are 6, 7, and 8. And you can look over our previous 3 years worth of taking an end of year assessment for iReady. Note that we didn't take it in 1920. That's when we first went out with the COVID lockdowns. K1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are shown here. 6, 7, and 8 are shown there. And this shows over time, again, sort of a similar pattern. Do wish we could have had 19 and 20 in that batch, though. Grades 9 through 11 gave additional benchmark assessments, and those are shown here. Reading on the left, writing on the right. And we took the NJSLA, ELA for the first time in 3 years, and this describes what students are asked to do. It describes the performance levels. 4 and 5, again, associated more with that green level in iReady. And here you have levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and levels 4 and 5 being regarded as proficient. Again, you can see how we compare with the state at different grade levels. Here you can look at our percent proficient at each grade level. And here you can look at our racial ethnic subgroup data, additional subgroup data, with about 36% of our students who are still working to get them in, obviously the approaching, but preferably the proficient range, and that's the work that is in front of us now. So this is what we're doing in K5, and here's what we're working on in 6-12. We have Access for ELS data. Access is the assessment that measures how well students are learning English. Students who are learning English, for the first time formally. And so performance levels are entering and then emerging, developing, expanding, bridging, and reaching. And this shows the percentages of our ESL population in grades K through 5 in those categories. And this shows 6 through 12. Note that 118 of our students were able to exit the ESL program because they earned a score of 4.5 and met some other criteria, 4.5 on the access test. The dynamic learning maps assessment is an alternative assessment for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, and they get measures in ELA, math, and science, and their levels are emerging, approaching, at target, and advanced. And you can see here that we had students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 for math and ELA, and for science in grades 5, 8, and 11. And those are the percentages of students who met those different targets. Our graduation cohort data, similar to last year, graduation rate of approximately 89%. 542 students were in the cohort count, 481 graduated, 37 were retained. This is the racial ethnic breakdown of students who graduated, also additional demographic subgroup data. And these are the different pathways. You see the majority of our students graduate by the state assessments, and there's those additional competency tests, portfolio assessments, or an alternative pathway in an IEP. Our advanced placement scores. Scores of 3, 4, and 5 are generally regarded as scores that potentially can be used for college credit. And honestly, any student who takes an AP test or takes an AP course is better prepared for college. So we're glad that many of our students take AP courses. Obviously, we want to get higher scores because those are more easily transferable for credit. So our goal is to move more of our students into 4 and 5 always. And these, again, are different subgroup data samples that show the different score ranges of students who took AP tests for us last spring. This chart shows our enrollment trends. In 16-17, we had a lot of disproportionality. If you see, for example, 40% of our students at Franklin High School were African American, but they only represented 17% of students in our AP courses. And these are the different sort of proportions, enrollment proportions. In 1920, after a couple of years of working with EOS, we saw a change over time, whereas in 1920, 38.6% of our students are African American, but now they comprise 30.5% of students in AP. And again, these are students who had high scores, were in honors classes, but for a number of reasons chose not to take AP classes or weren't invited to take AP classes very intentionally. Over time, we started to change the way that we recruit students for AP classes, which again, your chances of graduating college increase when you take at least one AP class. Since 2021, again, less disproportional. So these two columns represent 2021 enrollment and then enrollment in AP. So you want to compare these two columns together. And in our current year, 33.8% of our students are Black or African American, and in AP, 27.6% of our students are Black or African American. So this describes our current ratios. If you would like to know more about these assessments, there are some links here, websites that you could go to. If you have questions about the content area, science, math, language arts, or any of the AP assessments, you can find the content area supervisors on that portion of the web page. And if you have any questions about this presentation, please contact me at this email address. Thank you very much.
I do apologize for that volume in the beginning, but as Dr. Avali said, the screencast is on the web page as well as the PowerPoint that was being described. So you can go more slowly and look at the graphs a little more carefully. And of course, you're invited to reach out if you have questions, you want to know anything about the assessments or about steps that we're taking to obviously do the best we can to move forward and attain higher levels of proficiency. So,
Yeah, and I just want to comment, Dan, too. I want to remind folks that, obviously we're concerned about some of the scores, but we're also looking at them with a lens of sensitivity to the fact that we were still challenged last year with not what I would consider a normal year. I mean, there was even a point in the year where we pivoted to remote, if you recall, around the holiday time due to an increase in spiking cases in the township. So we're in a much better place moving forward this year. We don't anticipate any of that. We're hopeful that we don't see any of that. We're having much more of a traditional year. We're back to some of our traditional strategies that helped us to see a tremendous amount of growth in previous years, pre-pandemic. Things like our small group instruction, things like our, go ahead, Dan, I'm losing it.
Manipulatives and hands-on.
Hands-on kinds of experiments, things that we couldn't do. If you walked around our buildings last year, you would have likely witnessed kids sitting in chairs like that, all facing forward, which is not our style of teaching. So we're back to something that resembles more of what we were doing pre-pandemic. So we're going to really focus hard on the data that we collected at the beginning of this year, our window one internal assessments, and utilize that to drive instruction going forward. And although this will be helpful, it won't be as relied upon as that information we collected at the beginning of this year, because we know that some of this data, for a lack of better terms, is somewhat influenced or corrupted, if you will, by what we had to deal with last year. So I just wanted to put that caveat in front of folks so that you're understanding that. I want to remind folks that are either on the phone or here, you have to hold your questions, so write them down to the public comment part, but I'll turn it over to you, Madam President, in case any board members have any questions, and then we can move on to Mr. Wilson.
Can I just add one piece, Dr. Avali?
Sure.
With the volume being down, one point that is true nationally and across the state is the content area that was hit hardest by the pandemic because of the way that we learn was indeed math. And the idea is that a lot of that is hands-on, using manipulatives. And without that, that has been a challenge pretty much for everybody. Science, especially in our district, knowing science is a major curriculum that we use, hands-on. So similar to math, it was just a struggle to do that when we were on remote instruction. And then as we returned last year, many of our kids, sometimes were quarantining, and that we still had some strictures. So we do think that factors into a lot of that, but we're open to just continuing to push forward and be the best we can be by following those next steps that are on those slides. So Dr. Ravalli, I'm all yours.
Actually, you're the board presidents.
Board president.
Bill, do you have any questions on this?
So Dan, with the Start Strong effort in September, I believe it was, first, when do you expect to get the results of that? And then what is your plan to tie in your action from those results with this data?
I think the Start Strong data might already be available, but the thing about the Start Strong data is it's actually not as high quality as our own internal benchmarks. The Start Strong data, I think, really is for districts that don't have things like Link It and iReady, which we have. So it's a way of triangulating what we already know from iReady and Link It and the state assessments. So I'm, like last year, I'm sure it will reflect what we saw in these scores here. I believe we do have that, actually. But what Start Strong is a very, very, very small sample of what was assessed in June. May and June, May. Yeah.
Laura, do you have any questions?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Sammy?
Yeah, I have a few questions. So thank you so much, Dr. Lagren. Just a quick comment too. I understand that running the video might facilitate certain things, but for me, it was a little bit tough to follow along. And then the numbers were just going by so fast. Actually, I pulled it up on my laptop, but I think it was just really hard for me to follow along. So just some feedback in terms of the future of maybe slowing it down or maybe just doing it yourself. I love hearing your voice. You're very charismatic, so.
I was ready to hit pause in the middle and just say, forget it and do it, and I would have done that, but.
I would have appreciated
It was a good thought.
Yeah, I would have appreciated that, and I would suggest that perhaps in the future to do that. But, so anyway, that comment aside, I did notice, or it seemed that in the data that, did the 8th graders get hit a little bit harder than everybody else? It just seems from the data early on in the slides, if we want to, I don't even know if you can go through that with.
If you were able to hear in grade 7 and 8, they take Algebra 1, many of the students, and also some of the students take geometry. So what with the 7th and 8th grade scores, what you're getting is not all of the 7th and 8th graders. You're getting 7th and 8th graders who are not in Algebra 1 in grade 7 or Algebra 1 in grade 8, and in grade 8 geometry. So that's actually sort of a subset of 7th and 8th graders. So you'll be able to go slowly through the slides, and it's a footnote there, and it's mentioned in the screencast. But yeah, middle school in the pandemic, definitely. Imagine if you were a 6th grader, your first day in middle school, and you're on remote instruction, and that's your introduction to middle school. For all those reasons that math and science are challenging, imagine also being a new middle school student. You can imagine how that affected a lot of our learners.
Yeah, so I'm specifically focused on, and again, it's hard with the presentation being a video to tell you to go to slide 14 or whatever, but on slide 14, the partially meeting expectations for grade 8 is at, 42% in the district. For instance, on whatever the next slide is, 5, where it says math meeting expectations, it's 3.6% on that bar graph one, whereas everything else is at 17, 20, some grades are 33%. Or, even compared to previous years, it seems that there was a big difference. For instance, that bottom red category, the really dark one, in 18-19 was 24, then 26, but in last year it was 39%. So it had a huge jump. The other category, 6th and 7th, had a slight bump, 2, 3, 4%, but that one had like a 15% bump. So it just seemed like there's something up with 8th grade that,
If I may?
I just wanted to understand if there was something there.
Yeah, you know what, because we see this, it's a phenom that we deal with all the time, and not only here, but everywhere. And that is because you're, in math especially, it is one of the areas where we do, and I'm trying to find the right term, but move kids in different directions, I guess. So your higher performing students, your students who are more math inclined, end up in algebra and geometry, and they're not taking that test. And those students that are behind are the ones taking that test. So you'll traditionally see that across the state lower. And then you complicate that here during the pandemic. That also probably was our population challenged the most, and who missed the most in remote instruction, right? Because they're the ones who need the most support, and there's nothing to replace the teacher and the kid being together. And in many cases, we didn't offer some of that support because we just couldn't. I mean, we had kids home, so offering AIS is difficult, right? So that's why you're seeing that. You're seeing that because that is the group that needs the most support that didn't have access to that support because we weren't here. And that's the group that we traditionally work hardest on to move them forward because they're the ones that need the most support. I hope that made sense.
It does, but I guess the follow-on is that, and I'll dig deeper into this, and maybe we can have a follow-up to sort of ask questions as we digest it a little bit more. But it seems like there might be more special attention needed for that group of kids moving forward, perhaps. Another question I had, sort of fast-forwarding, and I don't want to take up, I know it's running late, so I'm just going to truncate my questions a little bit. But regarding the AP scores.
2 spots.
So it seems that, so it's really good that we're seeing an uptick in the Black and Hispanic students. I'm really happy to see that. What I'm a little bit concerned about is that the test scores are, so if you look at the Black students, it's only 23% scored of 4 and 5 as compared to the Asians, which is closer to 50%, and then Hispanic students is only 16%. So I'm wondering if there's something that we can do to support those students better, because it's one thing to include them into the classes, and then we check that box, and it's a whole nother thing to now give them the support that they need within those classes to succeed. And I'm wondering if there's something that we can look at, or, yeah. Your mic died.
This is on.
And we don't see it as checking a box.
No, I didn't mean to intimate. I shouldn't have used those words.
That's all right.
I just meant that it's one thing, and it's well beyond checking a box. I think what you did was great, and I think what the district has done is great in including those kids. It's not checking the box at all.
Yeah, but I agree.
Yeah.
That getting a student enrolled in a course is a first step. So many of those students were in honors courses. They had high grades, they had high test scores, but we weren't really recruiting students into AP. So we succeeded in doing that a lot better. We're not finished yet. But where the work still truly lies ahead of us is in all the supports to make sure we didn't just get you into the class.
Right.
We have a district equity plan we've had for a couple of years, and a big part of that is about school belonging and about helping teachers recognize ways that they can connect even better with all students. And so we believe that's part of that, in addition to just straight up academic supports, So it's a fair question. We're not patting ourselves on the back and feeling like we're there, but we are glad that at least it's not blatantly disproportional anymore. It still is disproportional, and just being in the class, again, is the beginning. So I think you raise a good question, and we agree. We still have a lot of work to do in getting the scores up, having people succeed in those courses, and doing well on those tests.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr.
No problem.
That's all.
Just so everyone knows, Nishita didn't have any questions. I asked her before. Dennis, do you have any?
Just more of a comment that I know that we all, not just this district, all districts, how, the last couple of years with how things was being taught and how school in general was being ran. But just as a comment, I challenge all to utilize the resources, especially the office hours. If you see that your child is not grabbing or understanding a particular concept, I encourage you to utilize the office hours to try to help get up to speed. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ardeman, do you have any questions? Sorry, I just handed you something.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Dan, very much.
All right, thanks a lot.
Mr. Wilson?
Not screencasted, live.
I guess that was somewhat of a failed experiment. that he
Sometimes
tried.
technology doesn't
Yeah.
cooperate.
He tried, though, we'll give him that.
Thank you, sorry.
There we go. And Mary, is this on too? Mary, it's working? Yeah. Good. Fantastic. All right. Good evening, and welcome to the Franklin Township Public School District's presentation on the Student Safety Data System Report for Period 2 for the 2021-2022 school year. The New Jersey Department of Education requires that all public schools report on the incidence of school suspensions and the number of harassment and intimidation bullying investigations. We have to report that through a reporting process known as the Student Safety Data System. So all suspensions, all incidents of harassment, intimidation, and bullying are reported through this system, and we have to report that information out to the board and to the public in a presentation like we're doing tonight. We also take this opportunity to provide a snapshot of all student discipline, not just suspensions. All of that discipline throughout the district, and to talk about the resources available to our administrators, our staff, and our students that focus on the continuous improvement of safety, our school culture, and our school climate. Tonight's report also highlights key components of the district's HIB policy. It also addresses the measures in place to ensure student internet safety, and finally, information regarding the school safety drills, which include fire and other emergency drills. Before I begin the presentation, I want to take the moment to say that our district utilizes positive behavior intervention and support frameworks as our main focus, as our main driver, our main format in improving student behavior and improving school culture and climate. I want to recognize, because she's here and she helps with this presentation, Sharon McNeil. Sharon, stand up, go ahead. Because Sharon is very instrumental in working with me and working with principals and with each of our schools in implementing the positive behavior frameworks, which is a problem-solving framework. So we look at the information, the data in reports like these to develop the strategies that are specific to schools and sometimes specific to individual students in addressing our behavior concerns. So having said all that, without further ado, let's take a look at some of the data that's required through the Student Safety Data System. This is all of last school year, September 1st through June 30th, okay? So our goal last year, and some of that's carrying over into this year, is to increase academic achievement, to meet the social and emotional needs of all students through current and expanding programs such as our positive behavior supports, but we have other programs that we utilize as well, to provide students and staff with a safe school environment to teach, in which to teach and to learn. So, looking at the numbers, we did a comparison with the 2018-2019 school year, which was the last year that we were in a normal school year. And even though our 21-22 school year was reasonably normal, we believe it was somewhat close, even though there were some anomalies, like when we had to shut down in January, but it is still relatively close. Students were required to be in school when school was in session. Okay, so if you're looking at this data and this comparison, one of the things that you look at is that you can see that the numbers at our high school, our middle school, and our elementary school seem lower. This chart represents a comparison between the two schools, showing the percentage of the total population, the blue representing students who received no ODRs. They weren't referred to discipline. They didn't receive any detentions. They didn't have any suspensions. The bottom portion, or the shaded portion, represents students who had at least one ODR. The reason why I want to make these comparisons and look at them is, number one, to express the idea and the concept that the majority of the students who attend our schools respond to the directions, the expectations that are presented by their school teachers, their administrations. In other words, they basically follow the rules. Okay? We have a percentage of students that we do have to work with, and we do focus on that percent. I happen to really get excited about this particular graph, this graphic, because it shows the total population, and as you look at that, the population, again, with no discipline referrals, no disciplinary actions taken against them. That is the blue that you see. The remaining portion of the pie represents students that have received at least one ODR. And then there's a portion of that that's gray. That gray portion represents students that have received one suspension. So that when you're looking at this graph, what you notice is that out of the total population of all of our schools, the students that receive the suspensions are small. Now, they require our attention, and we work with those students in a variety of different ways. So, but, you know, I think it is important to see this graphic. So at the elementary level, you see that, you know, out of that total population, the number of students that get suspended, very small, 26. You know, we still focus on them, and you might expect that at the elementary level. The middle school level, again, a smaller slice of the pie. And we recognize, too, by the way, that middle school students are middle school students, and they're dealing with a lot of things even pre-pandemic. So coming back, you know, middle school students have still struggle with identifying who they are, what they want to be, whether they're children today or whether they're adults or whatever. So we work with them, and we'll talk about how we do that in a moment. And similarly at the high school. Okay. What we looked at are the top 5 reasons in all of our levels that students receive discipline. In the 18-19 school year, you can see the top was, the number 1 was bus disturbance at the elementary level. Now, last year, 2021, 2022, bus disturbance didn't even make the list, but that's not surprising, right? Because many students were being transported by their parents and not on the bus. So, you know, it kind of makes sense. What we kind of knew might happen, because students were not accustomed to socializing with each other, that there were issues with conflict. Some of that conflict resulted in physical aggression, so we look at it. But the interesting thing is that when we look at the numbers, even in physical aggression, 133 compared to the 18-19 school year, physical aggression was there were 243 incidents. So what is happening is that our efforts, the impact of positive behavior supports, of SEL, of all of the mentoring programs, all the services that we're providing are being effective. So I just wanted to maybe stress that. At the middle school, again, the top 5, physical aggression in both years, okay? And again, we're focusing on the numbers, and even though, you know, they seem to be less in general, with the exception of physical aggression, which is very similar to the 18-19 school year, it kind of points to where we need to put our focus, and we continue to do that. And at the high school, and as you know, looking at the top, but looking at the numbers, the number of incidents of cutting class is down. Disruption, slightly higher. Physical aggression, which did not make the list in the 18-19 school year, did make the list here. And we just point these out because this is a focus that we kind of make sure that we're on point with, because we use this data to change how to monitor and adjust how we're going to respond to students in general, to meet whatever their needs are, so that all principals and all safety teams meet monthly at the building level, but they also meet at the district level to look at this data and to develop the strategies that we're going to implement to address them. Our last comparison is in the area of harassment, intimidation, and bullying. And as you look at it, and the first column indicates the first group is the 18-19. The bottom group is our current, as last school year, the 21-22 school year. And while there's not a lot of significant change, there's still change. So, it is, again, part of our effort on the part of our anti-bullying specialists, our building principals, to address all of these incidents. And I want to point out, and we'll hear about it a little later on, that these incidents, by the way, each one, when it's reported, there's a clock that starts ticking. The anti-bullying specialist typically has 10 days to finish that investigation and then to present it to the superintendent so that we can review it. And we do review every one. So all of these investigations were completed in the time allotted, and they were, the number, obviously the number of investigated. If you look at the number that were not confirmed against the number that were confirmed. I just want to point out this too. Because an incident is not confirmed as HIB, does not necessarily mean that it was not a violation of the student code of conduct. So oftentimes what you will see is that students receive discipline associated with an allegation of harassment, intimidation, and bullying, but it may or may not have been confirmed because it doesn't meet the criteria. We'll get into that in a little bit too, all right? So some of the things that we do, a lot of different things to improve the culture and climate of our schools. This is just a quick snapshot of some of the kinds of things that we make available to students and to our staff and our administrators. In fact, some of these suggestions and ideas are also available to parents through the school websites, focusing on how students feel, identifying students who are experiencing depression. We just recently in October, so I stole this from our SACs, did the Week of Respect and Violence Awareness Week. Again, activities that are available throughout the course of the day during those weeks, but also throughout the course of the school year that focus on how students can develop positive relationships, positive decision-making, conflict resolution. So that concludes really what we have to report to the state through this student safety data system. But the other part of this is to talk about some other safety-related issues, and one of them is harassment, intimidation, and bullying, also referred to as HIB for short. I ask this question because in the minds of most of us, we kind of have a sense of what harassment, intimidation, and bullying is, but it may not align with what the state requires school districts to react to, okay, in terms of what harassment, intimidation, and bullying is. So I point out that, number one, it has to be motivated by some distinguishing characteristic. That is the number one criteria that the anti-bullying specialist at each school is looking for. What motivated the behavior? So, the next thing that they look for is where did it occur? Did it take place on school property, school grounds, a school bus, at a school function? Or if it didn't, did it occur in such a way that that behavior causes a major disruption to the regular operation and functioning in the school, in school activities? All right? So these two pieces are must in identifying what harassment, intimidation, and bullying are. So your anti-bullying specialist at each school is looking for those two criteria. Then it can also include one of these things as well. So did it cause physical or emotional harm to the victim or the victim's property? Does it have the effect of demeaning or insulting the victim? And finally, does it create a hostile educational environment by interfering with the victim's education or causing physical or emotional harm? Consequences. We didn't talk much about consequences in the past because prior to this school year, harassment, intimidation, and bullying behaviors were considered to be just violations of the Student Code of Conduct, and that the Department of Education kind of said out front that, listen, these HIB investigations are focused solely on supporting the victim as well as any alleged offenders, and that there won't be any record that is tied to the student. That has changed. As of now, students who are found in violation of the district's anti-bullying policy, that incident will become part of the student's record, not just for that year or this year, but it will continue to follow them. So that you might have one violation of the policy in elementary school, you might have a second violation in middle school, but guess what? It still counts as the second violation. And then you might have a third violation in high school, but guess what? All three of those violations still follow you. And that's important because as of now, this school year, students who have, a first or a second violation will be disciplined in accordance with our Student Code of Conduct. They'll also receive all of the other supports associated with that, and we document what those supports are. But upon the third or any subsequent violations, the student and the parent are required to do something regarding HIB training so that they understand what it is, they understand what the impact of it is, and that both student and parent sign off that they understand that before they can return to school. So we have a tool, and again, I have to give credit to our SACs for helping to develop that tool that we are rolling out in that regard. Now, our good thing is that as it stands today, we don't have any students who have reached a third violation. knock wood, right? Okay. So what do you do if you're a student, and by the way, the education and whether in improving school culture and climate, we believe that educating people on what the expectations are, what good behavior looks like, is important. So if you're a student and you feel that you are a victim of bullying, or if you see someone else being bullied, what do? If you're a parent or an adult and you see it, what do? Well, we always say the same thing. Tell somebody. Tell somebody who can do something about it. So, you might tell your friend might not be able to do anything about it. Tell your teacher, tell an administrator, tell the anti-bullying specialist in your building. And their names are posted all over the place, so, you should know who they are. Tell your principal, because they will take the steps immediately to address it. And again, know this, that in incidents of harassment, intimidation, and bullying, it involves working together with not just the alleged victim's family and parent, but also the family of the offender or offenders. So everybody gets drawn into that process to change the behavior. All right? Good. The next part of this is, what do we do? The school districts are required to tell you what we do about internet to keep students safe and protected on the internet. We do a number of different things here. Some of you may have already signed off on. We protect students' use of electronic communication. Every student is assigned an account, which is processed through the district server. The district server has, filters and blockers on it, so that students can't have easy access to those unwanted sites. We utilize a program that some of you may be familiar with called Go Guardian. If a student accesses or gets access to a site or researches information that is questionable or may be harmful, it sends out an alert to the counselor, to the teacher, to the building principal, and we typically react to that as quickly as we get it. Students in grades 3 through 12 are provided education in assemblies, in their classes, in phys ed classes. They're aware of cyberbullying and given instructions on what to do. And there is kind of like a complete list of all of those things associated with internet safety in our district policy, which also is in the Student Code of Conduct. And finally, school districts, as you are or may be aware, are required to do drills. That's something that we've been required to do for years, forever it seems like. So we're all familiar with fire drills. Fire drill sounds, everybody evacuates. But in recent years, we've also been required to do emergency drills. There's been a lot of talk about emergency drills because people do them differently all over. But I want to let you know, in New Jersey, they're drills for educational purposes. We're not trying to traumatize students, so we don't use simulations with loud noises or, fake bullets or, and all of that stuff. People lying in this, blood on the, on the floor, or students made to look like they're injured. None of that. It is educational. Okay? Our school districts our schools are required to let you know what those drills are and to let you know when we do them. So you'll get a notice usually by the end of the day, an email that lets you know that the school has conducted a drill, that everybody was safe, no one was ever in any danger, and a little bit about what that drill is. But so that you know, our schools will do, because part of this is required by law, 2 non-fire evacuation drills, 2 bomb threat drills, 2 active shooter drills, and 2 lockdown drills, okay? And then, so that's 8 drills, and then we can pick something else to do, another type of emergency drill. We typically do the shelter drills. And you will get those kinds of notices when they occur. All right? So I think, Dr. Ravalli, that concludes my report.
I think it does, and it's a public hearing format, so with that said, thank you, Mr. Wilson. We'll turn this over to you, Madam President, for board member questions first, and then we'll move on to public questions.
First of all, thank you, Orville and Sharon, for an excellent presentation. Bill, as the chair of Safety and Security, do you have any questions?
Basically, just a comment that on a monthly basis, Orville, myself, and the committee review this data and update it, and we get regular reports from Orville Howe, and we do ask questions about some of the HIB reports that have come in, and each month we try to clarify and talk about different strategies that might be helpful. So the Safety Committee is certainly keeping an eye on this, because it is a concern in all the schools that the discipline and the behavior improves.
Thank you. Nishita, do you have any questions or comments?
No, not at this time, thank you.
Lori?
No questions, thank you.
Sammy?
Yeah, I have a few questions. Can you go back in the presentation to the one that you said you really liked with the 3 circles? Yeah, it was, I think, early on. Just had a quick question on that one. Yeah, that one. So I noticed that the ODRs in yellow for the high school are significantly bigger than the ones for the middle school. So like as a proportion, it seems like it seems almost 50-50 between the yellow and the gray for middle school, and a lot bigger yellow than gray. Is there a reason for that? Are kids, because the population is also much smaller at the middle schools, are kids more quickly being sent to suspensions in the middle school, or are there actions arising to that level more quickly? Like what would describe or explain that?
That's a good question. And really, as we look at it, I mean, each situation is so different. I mean, there's, you know, at the middle school level, as I mentioned, they typically are struggling sometimes with, you know, one day they're playful, the next day they're serious. You know, it is just that struggle with who they are at that point of finding their own niche that leads to a lot of different, you know, kinds of behaviors, some which result in suspension, some which don't.
Okay. But it's not like a difference in philosophies or something like that between the different.
And if I may, I'll add to that too. One of the biggest struggles we have, and we've had at the high school, is class cutting. And, you know, the discipline for class cutting isn't suspension, obviously, because that would be
rewarding.
Right, it would defeat the purpose, right? So if you go back to the slides that show the number of, the types of data at the high school, you'll see one at the high school that speaks to class cutting and lateness to class as, go one more, Orville, yep, perfect. You can see that's the #1 challenge and has been at the high school.
Okay.
So I think that lends itself to a little bit of that.
Okay. So good that we're on this slide, because my second question was on this slide. Are we concerned about the number? Because I know that, so thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. And I know a lot of it is very effective. I also know that the pandemic has caused a spike in sort of the physical aggression around the country, not just here. And so it's not really a surprise to me to see it, but are we concerned that in the earlier years, we didn't even have it on our list, and that now it's third on our list with 120 incidents for physical aggression?
Let me tell you, we're concerned about all of these.
Yeah,
I understand
yeah.
that we're never going to be perfect. It is never going to be zero, because the very nature of schools, that sometimes students are learning how to deal with conflict, they're learning how to make friends, they're learning how to interact. But, you know, as we look at all of these strategies, and as I mentioned before, we meet on a monthly basis with building principals, we meet with the vice principals to talk about how we can improve some of that student decision-making, how we can improve their relationships, what we, you know, whether, you know, one of the just as an example, I see Nick is here, we were talking about how not having those assemblies where, you know, people came in and talked about what a good high school experience was like, what kinds of things qualified as fun and good and were wholesome and healthy and promoted memorable experiences. You know, so things like that are, you know, things that we're concerned and we're focused on all the time. We're using our PBS strategies, for example, to recognize and target specific behaviors so that, you know, and I get it, I remember that people used to think that PBS was, oh, we're just giving out rewards to kids for doing what we expect them to do, but it is not that. It is targeting specific kinds of behaviors and coming up with meaningful ways to recognize and to reward, you know, things that we're trying to promote. So as it relates to physical aggression, that is one of our concerns, yes.
Yeah, because to me, there's a big difference between physical aggression and late to class.
Yep.
Or cutting, like, they're not all equal, is my point. And physical aggression is, to me, of the worst things on that list, or the not worst, but most serious. Do we have any idea of what it was in 2018-19? I know it's not top 5, but do you know how significant it was? Do you have any roundabout number?
It did not make the top 5, but I can't remember.
So lower than 92.
Lower than
for sure.
92.
Right. Okay. It just seems like something that we should really be, I mean, I know we're concerned about all things, but that seems to be a very...
We are.
Yeah. A definition, because the HIB, does it have to be related to the race, religion, or et cetera, or can it just be something that somebody's just getting bullied? You know, like traditional bully, like you're walking in and some kid just bullies another kid.
That's the state definition. Just so we're clear, that's the state definition of what an HIB is, and that's where that comes from, out of the regulation.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm more asking a clarification. Like, I don't understand the state definition exactly. So does it have to include the race, religion, and all that other stuff?
It has to include some distinguishing characteristics.
Right. Okay. For it to be in that HIB, for it to then fall into the permanent record
That
and
is
all
the
that other
number,
stuff.
that is the first criteria. It has to meet that criteria
Okay.
before we can move on.
Okay. So like a traditional, like, hey, a kid bullying another kid, and like without it being like based on race or whatever, is not going to be an HIB incident. That'll just be a physical aggression incident or something.
A violation of the student
A
code of
violation of
conduct.
student conduct. Okay. Thank you so much.
All right.
Can I just take an opportunity? I'm sorry, Nancy, I know we're late, but I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to A12 too, because physical aggression is first and foremost on our mind and on our agenda tonight. Thanks to Mr. Wilson, thanks to President LaCourte, who actually got an initial email from the folks at Bridgeway. We're actually adding an additional service to our tool belt, if you will, similar to the Rutgers Behavioral Health folks that we have, and it's called Bridgeway Health Services. It's offered through PES, which is a county agency, and they're going to be working with us and our students as well, not only for emergency response, which is what they're known for, but from a counseling aspect as well. So we're excited about that opportunity, and that's a grant that they brought to us, so that's at no expense. So we're looking really forward to that. But yeah, that's just another example of something that we're trying to do because that very much weighs heavily on our mind. Thank you.
Dennis, do you have any questions?
Just a comment. Just like Bill, I'm on the committee with the Safety and Security Committee, and I know every month that I applaud Oval for, we really dive into these numbers. And throughout the month, we do have cases or incidents that cross our table, and just as a reinsurance to the public that we as a committee, we as a board, take every particular incident serious, and the investigation does occur.
Thank you. Ardeman?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have no questions. So can I get a motion to open this up to the public, as this is a public hearing?
So moved.
So second.
Okay, Ardeman and then Dennis. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we're now open for public comment. Please state your name.
My name is Stacy Daly. I'm here from Tap Into. Since the number of ODRs has gone down, I'm just curious, has your enrollment remained consistent?
Orville, can you use the microphone?
Yeah, the enrollment in both of those years was pretty close.
Thank you. If you are on the phone, please press *5 to get into the queue. Or tonight we're handing out the microphone, so raise your hand.
We're just trying to help move it along.
Yeah, we're doing a good job. Is there anyone on the phone?
Alfred?
Okay.
Hearing
Is there
no
anyone in the
one, I
public?
So, Madam President, since no one's on the phone, I move to close this particular session from the public.
Moved
Second.
by Dennis, seconded by Lori. All in favor? Opposed? So public comment on the Student Safety Data System Annual Report is now closed. Brian, can you do roll call, please? What? I'm sorry. Move it.
I'll make a motion to move A2.
Thank you. Dennis, second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's now moved. Brian, can you do roll call now? If you have time.
Mr. Tsai?
Yes.
Mr. Grippo?
Yes.
Dr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Ms. Maris?
Yes.
Mr. Shaban? Ms. Singh?
Yes.
And Ms. LaCourte?
Yes. That carries, so hit the button, Orville. Now we're on to our superintendent's report.
Yeah, and I just want to, the only thing I'm going to say tonight is thanks to all that helped prepare reports, and thank everybody for your patience. I know it's a very long night tonight. We've had a lot of presentations. October traditionally is, plus we complicated that with the additional need for a presentation for the multi-year lease. So thanks for your patience. Thanks for hanging in there, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. So as on the agenda tonight, there's an agreement with Kane University for the coordination of our strategic plan. Chairing that will be Dennis Hopkins, Sammy Shaban, and Bill Grippo will be members of that committee, and Nishida will be the alternate. And our staff and student families will be contacted in the next few months via surveys and workshop opportunities to submit their input on the new strategic plan. So more details will be coming. Some of our families will be getting phone and email notices over the next few days to remind them that their child's free and reduced status will expire tomorrow, October 21st. So everyone is encouraged to fill out an application for free and reduced meals. Applications are available at the board office, our schools, and online under district announcements on the main page on our website. Tomorrow, all student families will receive a test emergency phone, email, and test blast at 5:30, beginning at 5:30. And this year's parent-teacher conferences will be held during the week of November 28th. The afternoon conferences will be available for student families in person or virtually, while the evening conferences will be available virtually. And so we started this thing last board meeting, what's so great about Franklin. So your board members are going to say what one thing that they find is so great about Franklin. So mine is our staff and our volunteers are extremely dedicated. They don't stop when the bell rings to go home. They continue. And they continue learning, they continue growing, they continue interacting with the students and the families, and they're just very a part of the community. And this also goes for our volunteers who continue to serve in a volunteer capacity long after their kids have graduated. So that's what I think is great about Franklin. Sammy, what do you got?
You kind of stole mine, so no, but so ditto. So I'll just add on that besides the dedication, I love the ingenuity. I think this idea for the health center, which came from the folks here, is going to be a real game changer for our community, and I really applaud that. I know Hennessy, who we'll be talking about later, came up with an idea to change the way that we do honor society enrollment. So much of our staff and their dedication and creativity has only helped to make our district that much better. And I'm very appreciative to Dr. Dan, Brian, everybody else for all your contributions. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori.
One of the things I'm very thankful for is that the learning in our school system goes far beyond what is done in the classroom through the arts, through our athletic programs, and through the many, many clubs that our students are able to avail themselves of. And I really applaud that. It not only teaches them how to work together as teams, but it allows them to explore interests that may be unique to them. And I'm just very thankful for that.
Thank you. Nishita?
I'm very thankful of all the innovative programming that we continue to offer in the 5 years that I've been on board. We have brought in so many wonderful courses. I want to go back to high school, and that was not my favorite thing to do.
Thank you. I totally agree with you. Bill, what's so great about Franklin?
So this week, I like to do everything very current. And Saturday, I worked, like I do every year, the Project Graduation Clothing Drive. And I was so impressed with the junior ROTC cadets that worked the whole time, unloading cars, loading trucks. They didn't stop to the very end. I mean, I had to call their, whatever she is, I had the supervisor on Monday and just say that the kids worked with total dedication and integrity to what they were doing. And I was really proud to say that these were our kids. I mean, it was really an amazing experience. The Franklin Reporter and Advocate was there, and this year actually interviewed some of the kids about why we do the clothing drive. And I got a chance to speak, which I don't usually do, right? Anyway, I got a chance to speak, and I said to them, if Project Graduation saves one life, just one life on graduation night, all this stuff is worth it. And those kids were there working shoulder to shoulder together. So congratulations, Mr. DeMeglio is here, leader of that effort with the PTOs, and it's a great thing. The next clothing drive is going to be May 20th, and I think they have a surprise in mind with that clothing drive, which I'm not going to disclose. I'm not making pizzas or anything, but it's going to be something nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. And Major Vasquez and First Sergeant Bobe are responsible for our award-winning, very large junior ROTC program. Dennis, what's so great about Franklin?
As we stepped into this new school year and as we continue to evolve, one thing I'm very impressed with is our leadership, from the principals down, with some principals being moved to other locations, some being brought aboard. Very impressive, just to let the public know that you have some go-getters out there. You got leaders in place that really cares about the progression of the students here in Franklin.
Thank you, and that's so true. Ardeman?
So I'll take it a step further. I think what I feel Franklin did something wonderful is our school website. We've worked very hard, and it's gorgeous, it's enhanced, and information is on the fingertips of people. So we should encourage our parents, communities, and families that information is accessible, it looks great, and Mary's doing a wonderful job with the supporters and putting in, excellent pictures which are being revamped on a monthly basis. We're seeing new pictures, new information, and our principals are doing a great job maintaining their school pages as well.
Thank you. And I'm going to add to that. Every single thing that we do, every vote that we cast, every exhibit, every budget, everything that we do, schedules, necessary papers that kids need, contact information for your principals, your teachers, whatever, every single thing is available at franklinboe.org. So I really encourage people to definitely check that out. And now we are on to new business. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to read our committee and liaison reports into the minutes, so we're going to forego reading them this evening. Now we're on to, what? Comments. I always forget that. I'm sorry. So now we're open to, can I get a motion to open public comment on agenda items only?
So moved.
Moved by Ordeman, seconded by?
Nishida.
Nishida, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment on any items now open. Agenda items only. I'm sorry. I'm just rushing the meeting. If you're on the phone, please press *5. If you're in the audience, please come up and speak, or Mary will hand you a microphone. Do you have anyone on the phone? Okay. Anyone in the audience on agenda items only? Okay, motion to close public comment on agenda items only by Bill, who should speak into a microphone, seconded by Sammy. All in favor? Opposed? Public comment on agenda items is now closed. Now we are on to new business.
Okay, in the interest of time, I will not read each and every item, but I would like to make a motion to move R1, M1, A3 to A20, B1 to B7, C1 to C5, P1, P2, and Addendum A.
Okay, there's a motion for R1, M1, A3 to A20, B1 to B7, C1 to C5, P1 to P2, and Addendum A. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Dennis. Any discussion? Sammy, no?
No.
Lori, no?
No, thank you.
Nishida? No. Bill, any discussion? Dennis?
No.
Ardeman? John, can you do roll, or, wow, I'm so sorry. Hi, Brian. Nice to meet you. Can you do roll call, please?
Yes.
Mr. Grippo.
Put my microphone on, yes.
Dr. Hopkins.
Yes.
Ms. Maris.
Yes.
Mr. Shaban.
Yes.
Ms. Singh.
Yes.
And Ms. LaCourte.
Yes. And now I would like to welcome the new principal, the totally in place principal at Pine Grove Manor Elementary School, Ms. Hennessy Miles. And your poor daughter must be so tired.
Testing? Okay.
There you go.
All right, I won't take too much time. I do just want to take an opportunity to say thank you so much to the board. Thank you, Dr. Ravalli. Thank you to my mentors, Mr. Wilson, Dr. Solomon. I'm here because of all of the love and support that I've received over the past 2.5 years being here at Franklin Township. There's no one that cares more about students than the people before you. There's no one that cares more about equity and giving opportunities to all kids. So I'm just humbled and really excited to start my journey at Pine Grove Manor as principal. And I just want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And the really nice thing is Hennessy's peers are here, which is nice that we have our whole principal contingency. Congratulations, Hennessy. And now we are on to comments from the public on any topic. Can I get a motion to open public comment?
So
Motion
moved.
to. And second.
Okay, you heard that, right, Brian? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment on any item is now open. If you want to speak about anything, or do we have anyone on the phone, please press star 5.
Madam President, since all is quiet, I make a motion to close out.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Dennis, seconded by Nishida to close public comment on any topic. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Public comment's now closed, and now we are on to good of the order. Dennis, do you have anything?
Think I said it all.
Okay, great. Bill, do you have anything for good of the order?
No, I've said everything tonight. It's a great night.
Nishida? I just can't believe Bill had nothing left to say. That's in the minutes, right? Lori?
Nothing from me tonight, thank you.
Sammy?
Just congratulations, Hennessy, and best of luck in this new endeavor. I think PGM is in really capable hands, and I'm really excited about the future of that school and our district, and for you within our district as well. So thank you so much.
Okay, so on Saturday, yes, Dan, it's time to embarrass you. Oh, man, I really am rushing, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I also wanted to extend my congratulations to Hennessy, and it's always a pleasure to see other principals in the room. So it's wonderful to see Mr. Romero and the Solomon pair, and you have great shoes to fill. You named 2 great mentors here. I think you're on the right path. So congratulations again.
Thank you. So now on to Dr. Dan Logren. We participate in See America in Color. It's a program that was created by Doc Cunningham. This Saturday, our Dan Logren will be honored for, he'll be receiving a Hometown Medal of Service for his work in anti-racism and equity policy and curriculum. And that will, and also honored with him will be Reverend Katina Jackson, who is Walter Jackson, our colleague's wife. That will be Saturday at 10 o'clock at the Franklin Youth Center. And thank you, Dan, for all that you do. And you have to wear the medal every time. Okay, so I'd like to get a motion to close the meeting, please.
So moved.
Moved by Aardman, seconded by Sammy. Thank you very much. Have a great night, and congratulations, Hennessy.